Hey guys, this is Stephanie from milkshed.com and I got a new camera so I can finally do a tutorial for my brioche cowl. I'm going to be doing a tutorial with this little sample. I have this gray color and then I have this really bright neon color, so hopefully it's really easy to see what I'm doing, and I will show you guys exactly how to do the brioche stitch. So to do the pattern, you start out with 5 rows of just regular stockinette in the round, and it does give a curled edge, but that's intentional. I planned it that way. So you're going to cast on an even number of stitches. If you're trying to do brioche in the round, you're just going to make your life so much easier if you have an even number of stitches. I have placed a stitch marker just so we can see the beginning of the round. When you do the actual pattern, I have it set up so that you have the number of stitches that you need so that you don't have to be doing this like magic loop thing. For this, I just have this really long cable. These cables are the worst. They always hold their position and flop around really awkwardly, but we will make do. So to do your setup row, you're going to take, you have your edge color here, you're going to take your second color and you're going to knit the first stitch, and then for the second stitch, make sure you set your tail aside. For the second stitch, you need to add a second loop of yarn, and I find that the easiest way to do this is to just scoop it with my needle as I'm slipping the second stitch purlwise, and then we repeat that. We knit 1 stitch and then scoop up that yarn and slip the stitch, knit 1, do that same movement, knit 1, same movement, knit 1. You guys can see, just grab it with your needle as you're coming forward and then slip that all in the same movement. So you guys can see that I have finished my round. I end with a doubled loop here, and then we are ready to start with a purl round. So to do a purl round, if you were doing this on a cowl, obviously you would slip your stitch marker, but because I don't want to lose this, I've just linked it into the yarn. So we're going to set the knit yarn aside, and we're going to pick up the gray, which is what we'll use for the purl rounds. So bring that to the front, just like you normally would. And then anywhere there is 1 loop, we want to create another loop. So to do that, you just insert your needle purlwise, loop it over, and slip those 2 off. And then whenever there's 2 loops, we want to purl those together. So again, just insert purlwise and loop it. Slip those off, purl these 2 together. We want to make an extra loop here. Purl 2 together. Extra loop. Purl 2 together. When you get to the end of a purl round, sometimes this yarn can just be like hanging a little loose. Just remember that because we added an extra loop here, this is actually 2 loops, and we do need to purl those together. Okay, so once again, I am at the end of the row. I've just purled 2 together. We're done with our purl round. And we need to do our knit round again. You would slip this marker. And even though this is a little different than the setup row, fundamentally we really are doing the same thing. Wherever you see 2 loops, we need to knit those together. Wherever you see 1 loop, we need to add 1. So we're going to knit 2 together, and then again in this same motion, scoop the yarn and slip the stitch. Knit 2 together, extra, knit 2 together, add an extra, knit 2 together. And you guys can see that once you know what you're doing, I think it's easy to, not easy, but you get into a rhythm that isn't too bad. Okay guys, so once again, I am at the end of the row. I just finished my knit row. Everything can get a little loose, so I'm just going to tug these tails and make sure that everything is where it needs to be. So we've done the setup row, 1 purl row, and 1 knit one. And you guys can see that it looks like absolutely nothing. So you just got to kind of trust the process for a little while. So what I'm going to do is do a few more rounds, and then I will come back as soon as it starts to look like brioche stitch. Okay guys, so I just finished a purl round, and I think that you can see the pattern coming out here. We have our knit stitches, and then on the back you can see the pattern really well there. One of the coolest things about brioche is that it is reversible. So the last thing that I wanted to do was kind of give you some tips, I guess, about how to read your knitting. I think one of the most important things with brioche is that when you set it down and pick it back up, you can tell where you are. So the first trick is that the way that I did this pattern, this one right here, is that the edge is the same color that you use for the purl. So if you can just remember that, and you aren't sure what you're supposed to be using one color for and then the other color for, just remember if it's the edge color, it's the purl round. The other thing is that when you pick up your stitches, if you look and you see that you have 2 stitches and then 1 stitch, here the 1 stitch is gray, so that tells us that the last round that we did was for a purl round. If you were to pick it up and see a single, in this case neon yellow stitch, you would know that the last one we did was a knit round. So because this single stitch here is gray, we know that the next yarn we need is the yellow. So again, we're just gonna knit 2 together. So now you guys can see really well what I mean here. The last one we did here was purl, so this is gray. So we know that we need to knit from here. If you picked it up and you saw this, the single stitch is yellow. So you know that the last thing that you did was knit and that you would have to purl these stitches. So I hope this makes sense, guys. I know that it seems like a lot of steps, but once you figure out that you're really just, if you have 2, you're knitting together or purling together, you're taking one away. If you have 1, you're adding to it, and it's really just that in a rhythm. Again, this is like 6 rounds here. You know, we have 5 rounds, but then 6 of brioche. So give it, 6 or 8 rounds to see this pattern emerge. If you don't see it emerge by then, you might have done something wrong, but it should come out loud and clear. So this is 2-color brioche knitting in the round. If you guys have any questions, just let me know, but I hope this was helpful. Thanks.